Kevin, before we roll, do you mind just 2 inches down? If you can drop it a little bit below your mouth. You have such incredible cheekbones. We gotta get that, man. I gotta get that.
There you
Exactly.
go. Is
right
that blue
there,
still?
dude.
What is that?
Exactly.
Magnum.
Welcome to BrainStoke. I'm Tom Telford. Excited to have Kevin Day, co-host Preston Niederhauser today. We want to thank Aspire Counseling Network and Aspire Medical for their sponsorship of the podcast. Kevin, welcome.
Hey, thanks. It's good to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Kev, you're kind of a local legend,
Oh man,
aren't you? in some circles. How's
it's
that?
written on a rock somewhere that I think my mom scribed that on a rock somewhere to make it look like it was legit.
It is legit.
No, you're legit. Look, you're a two-time national champ, I believe.
Yeah.
When it comes to cycling, we'll call it cyclocross for some of you that aren't familiar with that. But
Yeah, there we go.
cyclocross and maybe fat bike. Is that it?
Yeah.
You work for a handful of cycling companies, and you do some coaching on the side and some different things. You're a family man.
Yeah.
You love all things the outdoors. You've done a lot of recent adventuring, at least on social media. We see some of that cool stuff that you've been doing recently. So that's really cool. And you've got a unique story.
Yeah.
So we're happy and looking forward to having a conversation with you today about that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to be
Before
here.
we dive in, I want to just mention a couple things. So I have a long history with the Day family, you know, and this is kind of cool to be here with Kevin, but I actually grew up with your older siblings, your sister Katie, Kyle, older sister. You know, I don't know if you want to talk about your siblings at some point, but maybe just a quick story if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So before I even knew Kevin, obviously I knew his siblings too, but I probably have had 2 conversations my whole life with your dad. But there are 3 or 4 men on the planet today who are my dad's age, who I've just, for whatever reason, I've known and seen them my whole life. I'll be on the ski hill and I'll be alone skiing, you know, whatever. I've been on bikes in the middle of nowhere, random places, and I will see your dad. I just love him. And again, I've only talked to him a couple times my whole life, but this is a guy who, when I think about my family and family culture and what I've wanted to create, your dad is actually someone that I've tried to pattern my life and family culture around. And I don't really know him. I just know he's out there doing it. And then I see your family and I'm like, this is just cool. These are really cool people, top to bottom. I think I've met your mom once or twice, but if you dive into your story, want to hear your story, obviously, but start off with your family, how you were raised, a little bit of background that way. Talk about that cool family culture.
Yeah. So I'm the youngest of 5. Grew up in Farmington, Davis County. My dad, both my parents were just 100% supportive of everything their kids did. We played traditional ball sports growing up and all that type of stuff. 3 sisters and 1 brother. And mom and dad were with us with everything, you know, carpool, driving to recitals or things like that. But then when sports picked up, it was like my dad was, if he couldn't be the coach, he was going to be the coach from the sidelines type of thing. And he's the type of guy, like somehow he knew everything about everything. He was an engineer his whole life, just brilliant guy, one of the most like intelligent and artistic guys I've ever known. But he grew up, his kind of history was just anything full throttle, fast action. He drag raced cars in Ogden and probably got into a lot of fights. And there's a lot of stuff about my dad I probably don't know.
Is he from Ogden?
Yeah.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah, right?
I love it. Even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would run into guys up at Snow Basin. So like Tom Levitt and Gary Nate, the kind of this old school Warren Miller crew ran into my dad, and they knew there was this guy that used to drive speedboats, and my dad was the only guy that would water ski behind this speedboat. that nobody would. They'd go like 100 miles an hour through Pineview or something, and my dad was just hanging on the back of that rope like
They will do it.
Yeah.
They will do it.
So yeah, he was. I mean, I feel like a lot of confidence in like when the speed increases in my life, like it all comes from my dad. Would be driving up Old Snow Basin Road, and it would just be bumper to bumper, and we had like a old school Subaru.
Yeah.
He'd just 4-wheel drive, and he just like goes into the opposite lane and just is passing all these cars, and he's like, "It's a powder day, we got to get up there." And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like life. Hopefully nobody's coming down this road, but even if, my dad would weave around it, and I felt totally confident in everything we did with him.
What's your dad's first name?
Forrest.
Forrest?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just sending a text.
Oh yeah.
Something tells me your dad and my dad may have crossed paths.
Oh boy. He goes by Sid. He got the nickname El Cid from the movie. I haven't actually seen the movie, but
Wow.
Yeah, he got that in college, but yeah, he goes back with a lot of guys in the Weber County area, and I'm sure he's brawled with them a few times. I'm sure he's drag raced them a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Love it.
But yeah, he and my mom supported us and everything. Once I kind of followed the traditional ball sport type of thing, but my brother was an amazing baseball player. And I was...
And now raising an amazing son, your nephew, who's legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really good. And Kyle, my brother, he's one of those guys that could beat anybody at any sport at any time. And he actually challenged me to a bike race once, and I was petrified. So I left ball sports because I felt like I can't follow in his footsteps. Like there's no way I can be as good as him. I was scared to death of that pressure. He was the pitcher, and I was like, I don't want all those people looking at me and the team depending on me. And that's why I like found bikes. I'm like, I can go do this on my own, and it's all on me, And
Yeah.
it wasn't a team dependent sport for me, and so I really gravitated towards that and the mountains and stuff. And anyway, my brother, after a bike race, we were up at Deer Valley. I was probably 16, 17 years old, and the whole family came up to watch the race. We were waiting for awards, and I'm just spent, like, you just raced your heart out. And my brother grabs my dad's bike, and he's like, "We're racing." And I was like, "Oh, this is it. Like, if I lose, I'm done. I can't ride a bike anymore." And it was terrible. Like, it was a short hill climb sprint from like the lodge up a little ways on this fire road, and I gave it everything I had, and I had nothing left just because I was done. And it was neck and neck till the finish line, and I got him by a half a wheel length. And I walked away like, if I didn't win another race the rest of my life, I was like, at least I beat my brother.
Yeah,
on that
totally.
one. Yeah.
We got to circle back to this. We got to circle back to this.
Yeah.
Because I know Kyle, and anyway, we worked together a little bit. So come back to Kyle.
Yeah.
Tell us about your other siblings.
So other siblings, my oldest, Sydney, she's like the caretaker, the greatest example of like the mom ever. She's got a couple, 2 boys and a girl. They're all graduated and kind of in college now. And Corey, next in line, she's like the epitome of the artist of the family. Just 100% caring, loving. She lives in Salt Lake. She teaches art. She graduated with an art degree, sculpture degree at the University of Utah, and does kind of after school mentoring and just the most kind of just compassionate. Like, if I had to pick anybody's home in my family to like, okay, I'm gonna go live there, it would be her house. She has like this is curated gallery of stuff that she finds when the people in the avenues are putting out trash. Like, she'll find an old door and she'll make something just awesome.
amazing.
Out of it. Yeah. So
Cool.
then Kyle, heard about him. We'll hear about him some more.
Yeah.
Good guy, 3 kids. His oldest, Cam, he's a pitcher at the University of Utah. Amazing baseball player. And his younger, all their kids are just super talented. And then Katie, who I think she's your age, maybe.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But,
I've got Katie stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Probably some I don't. Awesome sister. She lived in Switzerland for a while. Got to go visit her over there, and she's back here in Davis County, and we're all really close. So.
Yeah. Maybe 2 quick just side stories. So when I was in 8th grade, my oldest or next older sister was a senior in high school, Julie, and Julie was tight with Corey. Mm-hmm. And I was the token little brother. Hey, come with us. We'll get you out of school, and we need you to, show all of our friends where to ski at Snowbird. So because of my growing up, ski racing and, I would never ski at Snowbird on the weekend because I hated lines. But if I could, ditch school during the week, I would go. Well, Corey was one of those cool older sister friends who was always awesome to me. And I got to ski with her ditching school,
Nice.
several times.
Right.
And she was totally cool. It was awesome.
That's
Fast
great.
forward, I get into high school those years. And my favorite two girls in school, was your sister Katie and her tight friend Jamie. And I to this day, I don't know what they're up to. I just know they're laughing whatever they're doing.
Oh, for sure.
And your sister, especially in Europe, it sounds like Switzerland and building a company there. What they're, it's just been awesome. So
Yeah.
hello, all the day, siblings and family. Just cool. Shout out to all of you.
That's awesome.
Great people.
So texting my dad, live text.
Okay.
Dad, do you know Forrest Sid Day? And it's funny, this generation, so like our parents' generation, at least for my dad's run of circles, he knew everybody by the car they drove.
Oh boy.
So he's asking, did he have the fast 56 Chevy?
57.
Oh, it's a 57. I'll have to correct him on that.
okay.
But anyway, my dad had a 67 Corvette. I'm sure they ran in the same circles, absolutely. But yeah, he's laughing about it right now as we're
That's
texting.
awesome.
But both Chevy guys.
Oh yeah.
So we're on the same team.
Yeah,
Not
they're
cracking heads. The,
Oh,
the
yeah.
guys down in Roy in the Dodges, that's a different story. So
Yeah, his 57. That's one of those cars that if I could have any car, I'd love to have that.
Yeah.
He sought out the wheel well so that he could put racing slicks on it,
Of course.
and he put that same engine in a CJ5 later
my
in
heavens.
life, and just blew the doors off of anybody in a Jeep. It was,
I had that. I had a 66 CJ5.
dang.
Yeah, and it did. It was
Yeah.
fun. It was it was awesome.
So good.
That's
So those
great.
are your siblings. Tell us
Yeah.
about growing up life.
Man, the youngest. I was the favorite, so that's kind of a given.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, can do no wrong.
Spoiled, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I had the privilege of watching all of my siblings, explore, do the things, and I either found a way to like not do those things or get away with doing my things.
Yeah.
Or my parents were just tired of disciplining. I do remember one time I honestly I felt like I was a pretty mellow kid most of the time. But my dad came in to lecture me one time for, I don't even remember what it was, but I was flipping through the channels and I knew Star Trek was on, and he was a huge Star Trek fan. And he came in and started, Kev, we need to talk. And I just like subtly went to Star Trek. And it's
Squirrel.
100%. And I'm
It
like,
went from like, I'm going to lecture you to, hey, I'm going to have a moment with my son. Star Trek.
And then I back out of the room, just like avoided that bullet. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I had a really an awesome childhood. My siblings took me under their wings as the youngest, and I was that younger brother that always tried to tag along. My oldest sister had her friends. There was this guy named Gavin Smith, maybe. Anyway, he rode Harleys in high school. He took me to the batting cages. Then we went and got ice cream once. And on the way home, neither of us had helmets. We're running around Kaysville on a motorcycle, and sees these cops, and he's like, "Hold on!" And he just guns it. He's like, "The cops are going to come after us because we're not wearing helmets." And he was probably speeding. I'm this like elementary school kid, and I'm
Hold
like,
on.
"Yeah." So we go booking through these neighborhoods in Kaysville. I still remember this church. We like went over a curb, hid behind the church, and we like peeked out, and the cop drove right by. And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, "We're going to go to jail." I was so nervous. He's like, "Take your shirt off. We got to look different." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Like, yeah, they won't know any different. We took the back roads home.
Oh, man.
And I was so nervous, but I'm like, "Do we tell anybody?" He's like, "Yeah, we could tell your sister, but that's it." And I was like, "Okay, cool."
Skinny little.
Yeah.
And thus it begins.
Yeah, there it is.
Totally.
So, yeah, my life of crime. I'm sure
Yeah.
the cops are still looking for us.
Totally. Harley man.
Yeah.
That's
It was
cool.
good.
When you started racing bikes, like 14, 15, 16, was your dad Did he ride bikes? How'd you end up on a bike?
Yeah, that he always rode bikes, mostly road bikes. He was really good friends with like Joel Bingham and Rich Bingham, and so kind of grew up with them and had a little interest in bikes through Bingham Cyclery and whatnot. And I always rode bikes as a kid. I always had a BMX bike that I rallied around the neighborhood, and then mountain bikes started getting popular, and my dad kind of got interested in that. And so, yeah, about 12 years old, I think, was when we bought a couple mountain bikes as a family, and we shared them. And so I shared a bike with my sister Katie, and then we had another mountain bike that other siblings could share. My dad would ride. And so that was just, let's go ride some dirt roads around the house, or, the shoreline road or stuff like that. We'd kind of find our way to. And it became this kind of thing that, like, it was a fire that just lit inside all of us, or at least Katie a little bit, but me and my dad mostly. It was something that we just gravitated towards and kind of shared. And he still supported my brother through all the ball sports, and kind of saw me slip away from that and go into the cycling side of things. And that's he embraced it fully. And
cool.
Yeah. And I mowed lawns and snowblowed driveways for like 2 years to buy my own mountain bike, so I didn't have to share with my sister. And it went like wildfire from there.
Yeah.
How awesome is that as a kid? Like when your dad embraces something you want to do. Like I can't imagine. Well, I can. I'm sure it just felt so awesome to be like, my dad's a stud,
Right?
Because he's hanging with me.
Oh, totally.
He's doing whatever it takes to hang with his kid.
Yeah, that was one of the coolest things. There was myself, my best friend, and a couple of other of our friends. Dads would kind of dabble in it, but me and my best friend, our dads both rode bikes with us. That was what they did, and I looked at my dad as a youth. It's like, wow, I'm petrified of him. I don't want to screw up because I know he's going to come after me. But he's also like a really good friend to me. Like he's taken me to Moab. Like I remember our first trip to Moab, just like it was yesterday. And then it just snowballed into bike trips and bike races. And like the guy just went to the end of the earth to enable me to do that and help me do that. But he loved it as well. And so that was like, we shared this common bond that, I see kids nowadays that don't get that with their parents, or, it's hard to, cycling can be a tough sport if you're not involved in it, to watch it from the sidelines, because it's like your kid disappears into the woods and then comes back, and you don't know what they're experiencing out there. But my dad did. He knew what that hardship, he knew that struggle, and how tough and technical, and then he'd, would ride some crazy stuff, and he'd be like, we got to see this, do it again. He's like, I want to take a picture. And so it was, a lot of that was encouraged, and,
Cool.
It's actually key to it, because, Press and I have been coaching in Mountain Green now for a while. And one of the big challenges, if you are a parent and you don't ride, is that first day you go into the bike shop and you're just like, are you kidding me?
Oh yeah.
Starter bikes, like $4,000.
Right.
And they go up from there, So remind us, it sounds like you worked hard. You bought that first bike. What was the first bike you went in? Was it the bike rack in Kaysville where you pulled the trigger on that?
It was actually at Bingham's.
Shop?
Yeah,
Bingham.
I hung out at the bike rack in Kaysville a lot, because that was like, at a certain point, I lived in Farmington, and we would just ride Main Street till we got to like somewhere that had food, a 7-Eleven.
Right.
Like, let's go to 7-Eleven.
Totally.
And then the bike rack was across the street. So we hung out there a ton. But I was kind of like this specialized. I was like, that's the brand, that was like my brand as a kid. And Bingham sold it. And so it was a specialized rock hopper, it had shocks. Actually the very first bike that I shared with my sister, my dad sold it to some neighbors years ago, and I saw him riding through the neighborhood when I was over there visiting, and I chased him down. I'm like, I need this bike when you're done. Like, not right now, but when you're done.
Yeah. And you have it.
Yeah, and I have it. So it's really cool. It's hanging in my shed. It's my very first. It's a specialized, I think it's a specialized rock hopper, and it's fully rigid. Like, it's got the original tires. Like, almost everything's original on it. Wow. It's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
that's great.
But yeah, that bike that I saved up for, rock hopper, had the specialized future shock on it, and I'm dating myself here pretty good, but I don't care.
No, I love it. It's cool.
And it was awesome. But and my good friend, like, his dad bought him like the stump jumper, so it's like the next step up from mine. I was like, dang, man, I wish my dad had buy me something. I was like, but then I took way better care of my bike because I paid for it, and it was just much harder earned thing that
Yeah.
I didn't at the time, I didn't like it, but I realized my dad was, teaching me some ethics of take care of your stuff. And
For sure.
Love that.
yeah.
So that was the first bike.
Yeah.
Got rolling, traveling with your dad, going to races, it sounds like. Talk to us a little bit about that moment where it went from, hey, this is kind of, a fun thing to do as a family to, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to push and make this competitive.
Yeah, just there was something about it that the thing that really attracted me to it was the suffering that I did. Like I mentioned, I did it on my own. Like it was all about me. I didn't need somebody else to assist me in it, or nobody else was depending on me. And so that's where I feel like I'm a bit of an introvert at heart. And the bike just became this vehicle for me to just explore and to leave everything kind of behind and go be with myself or a couple buddies, that we all kind of shared that with. And so that's what kind of, I just absolutely loved that aspect of it. And then we did a race up at Snow Basin. It was like the first mountain bike race I ever did at Snow Basin. I'm pretty sure they ran us right up School Hill. Like there's no trail, there's no road, no trail. There was absolutely no trail. There were fire roads, but like at some point I remember everybody was walking up this giant grass hill, and I was like, this is ridiculous. But I was like, this is awesome. And I think after the race, they did the awards ceremony, and they called up like the youngest kids to come up first, and they had this huge prize table. And I remember hearing like the crowd was all upset because like the kids got to go pick first prize, And I was like, man, I was like this huge, cornucopia of like, water bottles or barns or just random stuff. But I was like, I could pick any of this stuff. And so I was like, there's a reward for this. And I just fell in love like immediately. And even the aspect, like the how hard it was, it didn't really cross my mind until I started getting serious into it and thinking like, I should probably like do some sort of efforts to like match what I'm doing in these races to help prep for it. But even that didn't come into play for a couple of years, and we were all just would go out and ride until we were exhausted and then come home and be like, all right, cool, race tomorrow.
Yeah.
Totally doing it wrong. But
Yeah.
that experience was like that's just where it all lit me up from there. And there was just like no negativity about it, or there wasn't any, the struggle was, I just loved it.
Yeah. You keyed into something when you started to describe it that I want to go back to. You described being, you said, I'm a bit of an introvert. I have found in coaching, even myself, I love to go ride with my friends, but I'm just as cool riding for 8 hours alone. Mm-hmm. Preston and I rode on Saturday with a couple people, and we were out there for a few hours together. But in terms of the words spoken, not much. And, I'm married to someone who's very social. And she'll oftentimes, when I come home, like, what do you guys talk about? You were gone for like 7 hours. I'm like, we talked about the ride, the sun, and a lot of people that may be kind of funny to people, but there's something that in cycling in particular, it seems like a lot of endurance sports where there are athletes who are people with personalities that are drawn to being okay, being within their own skin and out there. In some ways, they're more comfortable going and doing that, and they thrive in that than they are in other things like ball sports or team sports or, I've sat and watched kids in a play when they're young, when they're acting on stage, and it's like they're in their moment right now. Like this is their thing, like to be in this way. Talk about that, if you don't mind, your personality and what was drawn into that, because it seems like that introvert who can be out there, that in and of itself is part of the experience, that I don't have to necessarily worry about others. I'm just here.
100%. Yeah. And that's a great thing, because I say I'm an introvert, and if you got on a ride with me or we were hanging out on bikes together, you wouldn't think that, because there's certain places in my life that are like my safe space, I guess. But where I feel like I can flourish. I could be a leader. I could be whatever anybody asks me to be. and on the bike is one of those spots. I would say like on skis or in the mountains, that's also a safe space for me. Like to be on the bike, like I've spent so much time just noodling around on my bike because that's my comfort zone. If I had a chance to like go on a date in high school or whatever, or just go for a bike ride, I would have chosen the bike because I was like way more comfortable there. It wasn't because I wasn't interested. Of course I wanted to date and I wanted to meet people, but I was like, nah, this is way cooler here for me.
Yeah.
And the comfort zone that I had there. Some of like my greatest, like most memorable experiences or things that just really bring like life in full circle to me are on the bike or on skis or with people in those moments. Like you say, like I might not have said a whole lot to them, but we shared something. We shared this workout or this trail, and you got back and you were just like, you just high five, and not high five is just like, that says it all. It's like, that was incredible. Like I think an example of, I guess, is my first time to Manhattan. Like I was staying in a hotel across the river and I could see it. I was like, oh my gosh, like there's New York. Like I've never been there. We had an early flight out the next morning, but I was like, I want to go check it out. At least go. I found a train, rode into the city, popped out of the subway somewhere, and just like walked around. And I was like, this place kind of sucks. Like, had no interest in coming back. And that was 6 months later. I was back in New Jersey, and I had my cross bike, and I was like, maybe I'll ride up the river. I rode up the river, went across the George Washington Bridge, and I was like, I'll go check out Central Park. I rode through Central Park, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm like, I'm going downtown. Probably top 10 bike rides of my life was just rallying the streets in downtown New York City. Like, and it was because I was on my bike. It was a whole new experience for me. It was a whole different city. I felt so confident. Like, it was, it was busy. It's crazy. Taxis, people, pedestrians, but I was just like, embraced it. And it was like, I felt so good in that mode of transportation and my little companion that I had with me. It was like, I probably rode 60 miles like around the city and over every bridge I could. And I went back the next day and did the same thing. It was just, I was so enamored by it because of the bicycle.
Double click, man. Keep going. I want to know more about that because there are so many people who feel that way. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to put your finger on what was going on.
Right.
You said a companion.
Yeah.
You said your comfort zone. The bike has something. Have you been introspective enough to know to actually put a finger on it for you? What is it about that?
I think it's these things like, I don't know. I guess maybe a lesser example of it would be I went to the doctor's office yesterday because I coming off ACL surgery, going back for a checkup, and I'm sitting in the doctor's office, and everybody's sitting there on their phone. Just like when people sit, when they're quiet, when they're alone, when nothing's happening, they feel like they need to have like something. And I can't say this for everybody. Maybe somebody's reading articles or they're doing something productive or answering emails or whatnot. But I like to go in places like that, or a restaurant if I eat alone, just like and leave my phone in my pocket or something and just try it, and it feels really uncomfortable. And so I think there's people have these little comfort things that they like to have with them, and so in my, I guess, a bigger perspective for me, like when I get on my bike, like, and we're sitting at a trailhead or waiting for people to show up at the trailhead, like I want to be on my bike, like riding circles in the parking lot, like, hey, let's see who can do the coolest little bike trick in this 15 square feet.
Yeah.
Because that's what I did as a kid. I was like riding my bike in my driveway to see like, okay, if I can wheelie from this line and to that line, or if I did that, now I have to touch my wheel, I have to land on that dot, like that oil spot, like, or how many like tight of a circle can I do? Or, I was, it just became such an extension of me and who I am. And then when I get off that bike, if somebody invites me to like a social party or something like that, I walk in, I'm just like, ooh, but if I was like on my bike, like, like the movie Rad when they go to the dance.
Here we go.
There it is. Maybe that's
Send
what
me an
inspired
angel.
it. Yeah.
How's it taken
Send
this
me an
long to
angel.
reference rad?
I
Oh.
knew it was going to come up. I just
needed
knew
some
with you
old school
that
guy.
the Ren would show up. Yeah,
Right.
Rad Racing was going to roll in. So it's something about even the way you described it is I feel like we're soul brothers that way in that when I'm in motion, I'm not insecure.
Yeah.
I have confidence. I'm going somewhere.
Right.
When I'm solid, not moving, there's something that I don't feel comfortable the same. You know, I'm that way. I'm not antisocial, but I'm anti-insecurity, and I feel insecure when I'm not in motion, you know, with people. I basically have, you know, a circle of 3 people on the planet that I can sit with quietly, and I don't feel the anxiousness bubble up. Everybody else, for the most part, I'm my best when I'm moving. And it sounds like that your life experience is similar, that when you're in motion, that purpose or whatever it is, you cue into a different place in your confidence.
Yeah. 100%.
When you set that phone down in a restaurant and try to be introspective, like what's happening? Like what are you doing?
The first thought is, man, everybody's looking at me thinking, what's that weirdo looking at? You know, like, and then it's like, oh, I can't look at people for too long. And then I'm like, am I looking around too much? Like, so I'll find like a comfortable spot, like right now, that ruler in the back. I'm like, okay, cool, that's a good spot. You know, like, but it's like, no, I'm going to sit here and like open myself up. And it's a challenge to me because it's easy to just like, I mean,
Scroll.
Yeah, scroll.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of stuff that I could grab my phone and actually probably be productive. Or I could like, I've got videos on here. I'm like, oh, I'd love to edit stuff and tinker with things. And I like to, the artist in me, that's why I edit photos and videos and make stuff. I'm a creator. And so I get a lot of passion out of that because it's like, I'm kind of in motion, but I'm working and I'm trying to recreate an experience that I had. And I think that's where that kind of comes from for the videos that I'll try and make or stuff like that, I see things and it's like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. I need to like capture it and share it, and not for anybody else. It's for me, like so I can relive it or feel it again. Like if all social media was wiped off the earth, I wouldn't care. I would still shoot photos and make videos just for myself because I like that. I like the process, and I think that's kind of tying back to bike racing and where that happened. Is I found a process in training to get to an event, and which is hard because you work so hard, and then sometimes all of your eggs are kind of in this basket, and sometimes that basket can just get ripped apart and all your eggs crack and they don't make a good omelet or anything, whatever, you know. And but the whole process leading up to it is like, wow, if you can capture that and really glean the stuff that you learned in that process, then it doesn't matter how the event goes.
Yeah.
In the long run, really. But
yeah. But the training, to go back to your kind of maybe teen years, it sounds like you were fine being alone on the bike. You're out there working. You enjoyed the rewards. You know, relationally, you and your dad were doing it together. And so if you think about who you were at that time, did bike racing and biking become your identity? Like in your social circle?
Yeah,
right?
it really did.
Was some of that kind of ego stroking starting to happen during those years where it's like, hey, he's having success and, you know, this is cool. He's doing something really cool, unrelated to Davis High football, or, you know what I mean?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And at my age, when, you know, there was a handful of us that was our thing, is riding bikes, and it wasn't really like, it was nowhere near what it is now, obviously, but it was, everybody got their driver's license and off they went in their car, and it was like, sweet, now I can drive to this trailhead and go ride. But yeah, that really did become a lot of my identity, and that was a huge thing when I stopped racing professionally, or I toned it back a lot, because I felt like I was giving up a lot, or I was losing a lot of who I was in that space. So that's a whole nother can of worms to unpack. But yeah, it was really like this. I'm Kevin Day, like, oh, he's that guy that rides bikes, or he skis in the winter. I was like, yeah, those are two things that I'll be happy to be known for. Anything else is like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was that? Was that teen years, you would say?
Yeah.
During those,
it was when it really, like, yeah, it's like, and my dad was like such a good champion of like talking to people about the bike race that we just went to, or I had this, everybody kept like a little photo album of their greatest hits and stuff like that. And all of us had like kind of nice little cameras growing up, and we would try and every time we'd hike Middle Bull Cirque or Mount Ogden or something, would shoot a lot of photos of it because it was an all-day event back then, and would print our photos and have this little photo album. And my dad would have visitors over, and he's like, "Kevin, go get your book." And it was like, I'm like, "My book?" And he's like, "Those photos you've been," because he was like really proud to show, like, "Look, this is what my son's doing." And I was like, "Dad, it's kind of embarrassing," but I was also like, "Yeah, sweet. Like, I'm getting acknowledged for this, and this is like, I'm so passionate about this, and somebody cares about it." And it was cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
reinforces that identity and persona, and identity and persona feeds into work ethic and continuing to do it in the progression and, doing those things. When did you talk about kind of seeing success maybe, in those teen years and how that grew into going pro? Describe that, and in what specifically were you going pro in?
Just cross-country mountain bike racing was my main discipline. And as a teenager, it was really, the scene was really, really hot and heavy. Like, there was at any given pro race, there was 150 racers that would show up to a race. And as racing as like a junior expert was kind of like the feed into the pro category at that time. And it was huge competition. There was probably, huge competition in relation to today is totally different, but there was probably 6 to 8 of us in the state that could compete nationally on a really high level. And then a few of those people ended up actually going pro and making a little bit of a living, or having good sponsors that would take care of them and get them to places. And I saw that potential of being like, wow, I could actually be a professional athlete. Like, and maybe somebody would pay me money to do this for a living. And I couldn't believe that was actually an option. When I was in high school, it's a funny story, my guidance counselor, it was like career day or whatever, and you're going through and, what do you want to be? And I was like, I want to do something in the outdoors. In my mind, I wanted to be like a helicopter ski guide or something. And she's like, oh, you should be a postman. They work outside. I was like, oh, crap. Like, well, I guess I got nothing.
Or
yeah. And so obviously she didn't
totally
get it. And
they have a good retirement plan.
They do. Yeah. And any postmen out there, I love you. I bring my mail. That's great.
Yeah.
But I was just like, gosh, I felt like I was shot down. And then I probably just blew it off. But it's just kind of a funny story. But I was like, oh man, like I saw this in my real life, and this life that I was kind of living outside of school. And I thought this could be a path for me, and then it became an Olympic sport, and I was like, wow, I want to go to the Olympics one day. That was like kind of a goal for me, and I never made it to the Olympics, but I don't know. I turned professional and got to race with some of the biggest guys in the world, and it was an amazing experience. Okay.
When did you turn pro? What age?
I think I submitted. So at the time, you had to submit like a resume and a proposal to the UCI, and I was 19. I think when I was 20, I turned 20, and I got the letter from the UCI that approved the professional license. So, yeah, 20 years old, and it was actually kind of cool because they had at all the national events, they had a separate registration line for the pros, and before that, I'm registering and I'm lining up with. They added this semi-pro category, so it was like the experts got really fast. They could go to the semi-pro, and the idea behind that was you would race the same course as the pros, and you can kind of really compare yourself, not with them, but at time-wise. And I was super intimidated because I was a contender in that category, and I was a nervous wreck when I go to races. But I got that pro license, and I was so proud to go up to that pro window and register, and I rolled up to the line. I was just like, these guys are gonna smoke me. I'm like, I'm not intimidated at all. Like, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Different mindset.
Totally different mindset.
Gratitude at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Pre-pro, if you go back, if you can remember, obviously you're super talented, but what were your insecurities on the bike or weaknesses would you say? When you look back, I mean, whether they were physical or mental, but what would you point to and say, yeah, during those years, this was my struggle?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that struggle that I'm going to reference kept till today from time to time, was I was too nice. I wasn't a fighter like you should be on the bike, or in your discipline, whatever you're going for. Like I would let people, I would pull the draft for too long, or I would kind of let people, walk all over me as much as you kind of can in cycling, and take advantage of me being a strong person or a climber or something like that. And people would play little mind games and, things like that, as you can do. And I learned tactically over the years, like I got to change things how I do. And I would chip into it a little bit, but it really didn't change for me until much later in my career.
If that, it sounds like, because it's not your nature,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how did you change that to become maybe your nature a little bit?
I had a really good coach that my wife had a really good talking to. And she was like, listen, you got to get Kevin out of this mindset. He's letting people, and this was more in the cyclocross, where it was probably a little more tactical than a mountain bike race.
Yeah.
And she's like, you have to find a way to get Kevin to like dig a little deeper, push a little harder, and fight, for this position. And I'm trying to remember where I heard this, probably a podcast somewhere, but you guys remember who Bo Jackson was?
Sure, of course.
Amazing athlete, pro,
The best.
football, baseball, whatever.
Yep.
There was an interview with him, and they said, what's Bo Jackson like off the field? What's Bo Jackson like on the field? Because they were talking to him in studio, and he's like, Bo Jackson's never played a down of football in his life. And they were like, what do you mean? He's like, I can't take Bo Jackson on the field. He'd get clobbered. And he's like, every game he makes an intentional right foot onto the field of play, and he's like, I flip a switch, and that person's job is to destroy anybody that gets in my way. And he's like, that person stays on the field and never comes off. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And so from then on, and my coach did some really cool like mindset stuff with me. Had me run through scenarios like over and over. Before every race, he would give me like a new scenario to deal with, and it was really cool. And he's like, you need to like go deep dive into your visual here. And for me, that was pretty easy, because I'm in my head. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on in here that will never see the light of day. But I love, like, it's like a wild imagination thing in there. But I took this and I was like, all right, I need a switch at every race, because I can't, like, I would show up to races and I'd just be like goofy and sarcastic and probably hiding those insecurities or that nerves that I had. And
Coping.
Just, messing around on the start line. And I knew it drove my dad nuts. He's like, you got to focus, Spud. Like, and he's like, how you feeling? I'm like, I don't know. We'll see, And deep in my mind, I'm like, I feel good or I feel bad. Like, I knew how I was feeling, but I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want to show it because I didn't know how. And so,
was it not know how, or you didn't want the pressure of the outcome from someone else?
Probably that. Yeah. And if I said, I feel really good today, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta back that up.
Yeah.
That's tough. Or I feel bad today, and then it's like, well, that's my excuse,
Yeah, that's real.
It is 100%. So I was like, I got to do this Bo Jackson thing, and I have to have a switch, and I can't turn that switch on when I'm getting ready or when I'm warming up, because you're mingling with other buddies, and like, I just didn't want people. I've seen guys that turn that switch on before the race, and you pass them as you're out warming up, and you wave, and they just like this, death stare. And I was just like, whoa, geez, easy, buddy. Like, we're just here riding bikes. Totally. And so I found a way to like turn that switch on. Like, I'm in the chute or whatever, and generally they start, and most races start behind the start line, and you pass over the start line, and then you obviously have to cross the start-finish line. And so that was my switch. Like, as soon as my front tire went over that, it was like, you're now someone who will take no prisoners. Like, you won't feel bad to throw an elbow, to like hold your ground, do what you do. This is your event. This is your race. This, like, all that work, all that effort, like, don't just give it away anymore. And so it was tough. Like, it was really hard to like find that.
Yeah.
As much as I like went over it over in my head, you get on course and sometimes you're just like, maybe you're just not feeling it. And that switch would come and go. But I got better and better of being like, regardless of how I feel or how the outcome is, like, what's the next thing that person can do to get better in this event, regardless of what's happened. And that was huge for me.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Thinking through that, flipping the switch and then trying to stay engaged in the switch being flipped. Mm-hmm. We can see that often. Preston is, a father of an incredible cyclist, and you're aware of, Mid and what he's done. And it's interesting to see kids who can get to the point where they can stay in the switch. Mm-hmm. They have the mental capacity. They've built the mental endurance to stay switched until the finish line. Give some advice maybe at this point in the stage, as you look back, but what were you doing to stay switched? Even when you were on your A game, but to stay fighting, until the end.
Two examples, I guess. One was this is kind of an effect of the switch. It was, they're both cyclocross examples. One race, it was pouring rain, like nuking rain at this park. And I was so into the race. I was so into the course. It was awesome. I don't even think I did that great, but after the race, I think it stopped raining like right as the race finished, and I was cooling down. I came back and I was like, man, that was awesome. And Shannon's like, I can't believe how hard it was raining. And I said, it was raining. Like it didn't even cross my mind that it was raining during the race, because I was just so focused on the race and that different mindset. And where it, a better example was like cyclocross nationals in Reno. Big, like so much work leading up to the event. Everything was like, just felt so good, felt positive the days before the race, felt awesome that morning. Just was so confident going into it. And there were a lot of things that went wrong in that race, but every time like something went wrong, it was just like I left it wherever that went wrong. If it slid out on the course and fell over, got passed by a bunch of people, and it was like I got up and that problem stayed there on the course, and I just moved forward and I said, okay, what do you have to do to get back to the lead? Like I started like calculations, algorithms, everything. Like you would think I was like a rocket scientist planning my way back up to the front of the pack. It was just all positive focus on what do I need to do now to get where I need to be.
Yeah.
To finish this race.
The training, the mindset training to get to that point where you can leave that on the trail and move on. I'd like to know a little bit more about that. I mean, it seems like...
Me too.
I mean, that's something we could all try to learn to figure out a little bit better, is how to, even in life, off the bike as well, is how do we leave that behind and move on and not let it just eat at us. At least maybe I'm becoming vulnerable myself on things that I just deal with and I can't move on from them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I struggle like just in my life in general off the bike. That's where I need that same type of training and stuff. But on the bike, for me, it was, leading up to those races and all those events, my coach would give me those little mind exercises. Okay, this race, and he would write out like a really detailed scenario. Start goes great. 15 minutes into the race, you blow a tire or you crash, or he would give some sort of negative scenario or something that would happen. And he would, how are you going to fix it? And I want you to fix it and finish the race, like in your head.
In those moments of quiet off the bike headspace, what would the main topics be? Or what would be the main things that you're thinking through? Is it fear? Is it competition? Is it the pressure of competition? What would you say you would spend your time on in those, quiet moments?
That's a great question. I think it would vary for everybody, of what maybe our insecurities are of racing, or what those things that we struggle with when it comes to riding and racing a bike, when that number plate is on, when that pressure's there. I know a few of my athletes, they're pushed by their parents really, really hard to perform, and they feel like they have to perform for your parents. And so to try and slap him across the face and be like, are you doing this for you? Or is this for your parents or your girlfriend or this, what, you know, who are you out here for? Cause cycling is a very selfish sport. Like, and to be good at it, you have to be. I mean, to be good at any sport, you have to be, obviously, but you just have to take into account what is holding you back or where are you struggling. You have to acknowledge that and sit with it and be like, yeah, I actually really suck at left-hand corners. I'm not an ambi turner. Bringing some Zoolander back again. Sorry. Find that thing and say, I'm going to go do left-hand corners for 2 hours or whatever. Or I'm going to sit and think about this insecurity, this fear that I have for this whole time. And I'm going to conquer that. And that's one of the things I loved about cyclocross. Biking in general just captivates me, but cyclocross is like, okay, I could work on grass corners one day. I could work on gravel corners the next day. I could work on tire pressure. I could work on dismounts, remounts. Like there's so many little niche-y aspects about cyclocross that you spend your whole week training different things every single day for it. Mountain biking's kind of the same a little bit. You spend most of your week training for that fitness thing, but then you got to think about like, okay, downhill, like just riding a trail in general. Like, how's my body positioned? Where are my eyes? What are my hands doing? How am I gripping too tight? Should I relax? Can I find different positions where my butt on the seat? Contact points, all that kind of stuff that goes into it. It's not just pedaling in it, really hard. And so I think in the quiet moments where you're sitting and whatever it is, if you just need full quiet or if you just have music or something, you gotta, like for me, just visualizing and thinking about all those little things that may have been a struggle at some point on the ride or the race. It's probably an endless checklist for most of us.
And evolving, I would imagine, just depending on what the last race was and what you're trying to work on,
right?
Going forward. But that's cool. It's fun to hear just the process, how intentional you really are, as opposed to like, I'm just going to get on my bike and ride around. That it's very intentional. Take us to a moment, if you don't mind. You may have to take a second to think through your memories, but take us to a deep, dark moment on the bike.
I don't have to go that far back. Yesterday.
Where a legit sufferfest, where your hopes were so high for a result, and you had to come to grips with, despite all the hard work, going all in, that you really wanted it, that you had to come to grips that I'm going to finish the race not how I wanted.
This is awesome.
Disappointment.
Yeah. I have an awesome story for that because it goes way beyond the bike too. And actually I had a conversation with Mitt that I got all emotional and I was really embarrassed about, but it was because of this event. So Mountain Bike Nationals, the Mammoth Mountain, California. And I love Mammoth. It's a very special place for me. The Sierras are awesome. There's something about the dirt, the smell of the trees. Like when you show up to a race, your senses are at 100%. They should be, because you're primed and ready to go. And so there's certain places that I've raced that I could close my eyes and go to it immediately because I know the smell, the feel of the air, just good. And I've had a lot of races at Mammoth or in the Sierras that have that. So very special race for me. I felt really, really confident going into the cross country. Loved the course, felt amazing. Like training plan was dialed. Everything was perfect. Had an awesome experience with a friend the night before that was there. We just hung out, chilled, good conversation. None of my family was there, but had an awesome conversation with the wife and kids at home, and everything was just positive. I knew I was going to win. I was just like, this is going to be the best day, because I've always wanted to get a mountain bike championship. And I even predicted, I was like, it's going to come down to me and these two other guys, and maybe another one. But in my head, I knew how the race was going to play out. And it was going to take, we had 4 or 5 laps on this course. And I was like, it'll probably take halfway through the race before it really separates. Get called up and the race goes off a little more than halfway, probably almost to the top of the climb. We had a big long climb and then a nice, awesome descent, flowy, super fun berms, jumps, like everything was just like, it couldn't be more perfect for me. And that separation of me and these two other guys had already been made. And I was like, this is it. Awesome. I'm like, all I have to do is wait for this guy to blow up, and then it's going to be between me and this guy. And I know I'm a better climber. I know it's just going to work. We got to the bottom of that descent as we're rolling through the start-finish to start lap number 2. I get a flat, and I was just like, shoot. And I didn't have anything with me to fix the flat. And it was just like dumbfounded at the moment. But at the time, like, I was like, no, I was so confident. I'm like, there was really it wasn't like a snow basin where it's real chunky. The course was smooth. I was like, I'm not going to get a pinch flat. Like, I was just so confident in it. And I've never had a flat at Mammoth. It just was a given. So I was like, I don't need the extra weight. I usually give my Garmin or my computer to somebody right before the start, because I'm just like, I don't need my heart rate monitor yelling at me, telling me this or that. Like, I'm here to race. I'm going by feel, and that's how I do it. So I got a flat. I didn't have anything to fix it, and I was just like, crap. So I pedaled the flat to the feed zone. My friend had stuff there, but I was going to get penalty if I took something, but I was like, this is my only choice. I took something, and the referee there was like, writing my number down and marking it up, getting ready to give me the penalty or whatever. I didn't care. I was going to give me 10-minute penalty. I'll go make it up right now. I was just so confident. And anyway, fixed the flat, and it blew again. And I was totally deflated. And there's nothing I can do. So I abandoned the race. I went back to my car, and I was just like, I can't be here when this race finishes, because I knew the guy that I knew that was going to fade. I felt like if I was actually staying with him, and I was like, if he wins or if something goes well for him, like, I can't go back to the condo. Like, it's just, so I took off. I drove up, like, behind Mammoth Mountain. There's these lakes, and I just went and sat, like, quiet, like, probably cried a bunch, because it was so heavy for me. And it just so disappointed, and eventually came back to the house, and the guy that I was staying with, he blew. He faded during the race, just like I thought, and the other guy won. And I was just like, I couldn't believe what had just happened. I was, everything was set. And so I felt like at the time, I'm like, all right, whatever, I'm over it. Short tracks tomorrow, we'll kind of redemption there, and had a good short track race the next day. But then went home, didn't think too much of it. And it was probably 6 months later that I was just like completely depressed. And I was kind of self-medicating with activity, with cycling, with running, anything I could do. I was just feeling like crap. I didn't know what was going on. And I just need to go ride. I'd go ski, everything. And I'd feel great in that moment. Was out just getting my fill of
stoke.
Yeah, stoke.
Serotonin's up.
Totally. Yeah. Yep. Sun, sweat, all that stuff. And I'd come back home, and it was just like lights out again. And I was just like, what's going on? And I was just in a bad place. And my wife, she's the most amazing person I know, has had issues or has struggled in the past with depression. And we got talking one night and going through all this, just unpacking stuff. And she's like, I think you're depressed. And I was like in the moment, I was like, no way, not me. But in the moment, I was like, oh, you're right. And I was so relieved to be like, that's what's wrong. And it was just like this weight off my shoulders. And I gave up, and I was just like, I admitted to myself that, yeah, you're pretty low, buddy. Like, and it was rough. Like, it hit me so hard. And it was like another 4 or 6 months before I like kind of started creeping out of it. And it was with help from Shannon, with help from a therapist that I was seeing. It was wild. Like, I couldn't believe that something that I loved so much, something I prepped for and just was my life, like, crushed me the way it did. And it was tough. I remember talking to Mitt after state, his last state race. And I talked to him a bunch before, and then I texted him after the race. I'm like, hey, when you're ready, come see me. And he came over. I was just like, sorry. Getting emotional about it now. I just started crying in front of him, and then I was like all embarrassed. I'm like, what's he thinking? Like, weirdo? But I was like, man, I know how that feels. It's brutal. But yeah, it's hard.
Mitt's never shared that with me, so I really Appreciate it. That, and we need to talk about what you've shared, but as a parent witnessing Mitt's experience, which is very similar to yours, the likely favorite to win.
Right.
It had been on the calendar for 6 years. Yeah. We knew what it was, and he had a flat. He was prepared to fix it, attempted to fix it, and couldn't fix it. Ultimately borrowed a bike and finished with a 10-minute penalty, etc. And I took it hard as a dad because I really wanted it for him, and I know there were nights for both of us where we would lay in bed and wish we could replay it, wish we could have done something different. And Mitt was like, Dad, it doesn't matter how much pressure I would have put in those tires. I think that rock was going to flat me no matter how hard I hit it, and so I think he was trying to just tell me to walk off the ledge. It's okay. So he showed some great poise but it still stung, it still stung for both of us. But I appreciate you of being a mentor to him, and Mitt worked for you for, I don't know, a year and a half or so. I can't remember how long, but I just loved knowing that my kid was being influenced by somebody like you and Spencer, and how great it was for him. And he was in his element, and it was just such a good, positive time, So thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah.
Before you mentioned her name, I had to think, where does Shannon fit in your story? And it sounds like she's been right by your side through probably every race in some form or fashion. From a wife to a therapist to everything else, she was all those things for you. Performance coach, maybe mother, etc. Share a little bit about Shannon and anything that you want, really. But I think she had a pretty big impact on what happens in your home.
100%. As good as it gets. I'll give you a good story to kick it off. Shannon's first bike race that my dad allowed her to hand bottles in the feed zone. This was awesome. So my dad I think my dad wasn't there. So it was like, all right, this is your one shot. So we're out at this bike race. I take Shannon to the feed zone. I'm like, all right, stay here. When I come by, just, you've seen how it happens. And she's been to a ton of bike races, so she knows. She is pretty confident. We came around the lap faster than she expected, and she was like, just down the course, and she's just coming, and she's just like, go, just cheering us on. And I'm like, throw my bottle. I'm like waiting for my hand up. She's like, oh no, they're in the cooler. She's running off into the bushes because she put the cooler in the shade.
Of course, yeah.
And I was like, and it was a big lap, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do a lap without a bottle or not. And I feel like I did turn around and stopped, went back got the bottle, and she was just devastated. She's like totally distraught.
I've ruined the race.
Yeah, totally. Oh, so bad. I think she was my girlfriend at the time too, so we weren't married. And she felt so bad, and she was like, "Don't tell your dad. Don't tell your dad." So I think we kept it from him for a while, but that's the only feed zone that she's ever botched. And it was just, I totally get it. Other than then, she has been the rock, everything in 100% support Kevin Day in bike racing. Shows up, kids in tow. There was one big race that we had a bunch of people staying at a condo, and nobody had family or significant others or anything there. So she had, I think, 10 people that she was feeding in a feed zone. Oh my
gosh, yeah.
And she brought stickers knowing that this was going to happen, because she was like, I can't tell you guys apart. So she brought colored stickers and put them on our race plates.
Oh, she's so
smart. And she would see the color coming and grab the right bottle, and that's how she rolls.
Awesome.
She is the efficiency.
Every pro team has now adopted the Shannon
right?
strategy. Well played, Shannon.
Right.
That's rad.
Oh man.
She's good. So 100% by my side, supporting everything. And she's the one who saw those things that I was struggling with, that as an athlete or as a human, it's hard to one, maybe admit that we have issues or something we need to work on it, because it's hard. You want to be this perfect person, this strong person, this leader, this whatever you feel like people are depending on you to be. And I have a lot of that in my life where I'm like, there's a lot of things that she'll call me out and she's like, hey, I think we need to work on this. Or hey, she'll talk to my coach and she's like, you need to put him through some hard drills in his head because he's letting people walk all over him. And that's what ultimately helped, get me a little bit better and push and make those fine adjustments. And yeah, 100%. Like
when we asked Kevin to come on, obviously the mantra of BrainStoke is, struggle and stoke. And there's a mental health component to everybody's life, and we didn't know necessarily this story, but talk more about your and Shannon's mental health stories. It sounds like both of you have experienced them, those, depressive moments of life. And you want to share any more about that, just how it's impacted your own lives and maybe, some hope for others who are listening.
Yeah, I would be curious about some coping ideas or things that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first got married, she had a little bit of a history with depression. And for me, I was so ignorant to it. I was just like, well, just go ride your bike. You'll be better. That was how I fix things. Right. And it worked to a little bit. And I'm the type of person that internalizes and just takes it all in and compresses it and throws it out when I'm on the bike ride or something like that. But so I ended up, I would go to a lot of counseling with her, for her. And it opened my eyes to how serious it is and how it's not just something that you can, pedal off. For a lot of people, and how we all probably need some help with it. So, we've been married for a long time, and we found an amazing counselor, a therapist that we go to for our marriage. Like, we spend all this time, we pay someone to help us do our taxes because we don't know how to do that. Like, there's no sense in like not finding somebody who can help. Like, we can't fix all of our problems, and there's a lot of really good like validation that we'll go into, and they're like, hey Kev, you're being a total idiot on this situation, or hey Shan, maybe you should lighten up here. And having that person who can really talk us through what's happening in our brains or our minds or our relationships, like really put perspective on it versus how most of us treat it, or just allowing us to say, hey, you know what, I am struggling here, and it's okay because I'm not alone. Like the moment that I put it out there years ago, I kind of told the story over a series of Instagram posts, and I was blown away by how many of my close friends, family members, and like total strangers reached out and be like, I'm in the same boat. And I was like, really? I never would have guessed that. And we see that in the world. We look out and there's a very curated vision of what we see people living and things like that, and we just don't quite know what struggles are or what people are struggling with, or what we're struggling with ourselves until we kind of hear about it or see somebody going through it, and we're like, wow, I feel the same way. Maybe I should seek some help. And
it's interesting that when you were younger, you in racing and in biking, you took on this project to become a fighter, to be more assertive for yourself. It's interesting that in sports or in an activity, we're willing to do that. That's okay, right? There's no stigma associated with sports psychology, but just trying to win the day in life as a man, a lot of people are like, no, I'm not going to go sit with a therapist or get ideas. Thank you for sharing that you go and do that. I too do it. I have a therapist, and if people were to ask me, well, why do you do it? You're trying to overcome something. The answer is yes, I'm trying to overcome life. Right. I'm just trying to win the day, But what I have found is that my performance as a human has gone up, as a man has gone up, as a husband and a father, because I have someone challenging me too. Because in those emotion moments of life, I tend to also want to do what? Retreat and get on the bike. I'll figure it out there. And it's helpful to an extent, right? I found that the serotonin, the sweat, the stoke, all those things, they help cope in the moment. But if I loop right back to, right, a mindset of just bad thinking or unproductive thinking about myself, I haven't really dealt with the root cause. And so do you find yourself that you're getting to the root cause more in therapy or talking with, your therapist about that stuff, that you're changing mindset, not just kind of coping and running from it?
Yeah, 100%. It's wild and the things that I kind of struggle with personally, like talk about them, some people would be like, really? Like that's what you're kind of dealing with? Like that seems either silly or like, I can't believe that.
Yeah. Watch a TED Talk.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I can't believe that I would never see that about you. And the conversations that we have inside our heads are, that's the most wretched place sometimes, of what we think somebody's thinking about us or whatever that is,
Self expectations.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like, no, people don't care that much, or they're dealing with their own crap. It's like, you're not even on their radar because they're doing the same thing. And so,
Sure.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to have somebody to validate and tell me, yeah, this is totally normal. Like your brain it's crazy in there, and that's okay. It should be. And that's why we're going to focus on this and this and see how it goes. And if not, then we're going to deviate and go here and here. And like, it's same type of thing as, as we prep for a bike race, or, you got issues with your bike. You got to have tools to fix it. You got to have things to prep for, to be ready for what's going to happen in that race, or, and if you're not prepared for it, like I wasn't prepared for it. And I've dropped out of a lot of races because I wasn't prepared for things. And,
yeah,
there's a lot of things in life that I'd probably drop out of if I didn't have a good support system or a buddy or therapist that has helped me through it.
Totally. I'm thinking just in your story, you've described a little bit since you've been here. A lot of the tools obviously have helped you on the bike, helped you in life. How have the same tools that you're drawing from now helped you as a father? Mm-hmm. Because, you have children, and it sounds like, even since you've, been here, you've described one of your children going through some pretty big stuff, things that maybe as a father, you'd be like, I want to drop out of this race. This is heavy. I want her to drop out. You know what I mean? There's some heavy stuff going on.
Yeah, that's got to be the biggest challenge of all. I think all of us can probably recognize that as raising kids and knowing, wishing or hoping that you have the best answer, the right answer for them in a time of need. Because there's times that as a father, I want to just scoop my kids up and be like, I got you. But it's like, no, I gotta push them away a little harder and say, go get it. Like, go figure it out. And Shannon and I have two very different parenting styles. And I think one of the things that she's always asked me, she's like, I need you to like give me your opinion on what you think. And I'm just like, well, you have this mastered. Like, you're really good at this. Look, I'm just going to let you take the wheel and say that this child needs this at this time. And when in the back of my mind, I'm like, I think we should try this. But I'm like, oh, I think she's got it, So I'm getting better at saying, hey, I think we need to let them do this or that, or, so it's helping me have the confidence in myself, in my decisions, in my thoughts, and being kind of that, I guess, a father figure in a way, or a leader in a way of saying, let's let them dig in this a little deeper, or let them fight a little more, whatever the case may be, that my opinion differs from her, but versus taking a back seat and saying, no, I think her idea is probably the best, because most of the time she's got better ideas. But when it comes to like, this, I glean a lot from my dad and the experience that he gave me and pushed me hard and allowed me to suffer in a lot of ways. And he, like I said, he was kind of my best friend, but I was also scared to death if I did something wrong to disappoint him. I didn't want to ever disappoint my dad or my mom in any sort of way, but granted, I'm sure I did plenty, but they were also like, I knew I could go to them, and ultimately I just want, I want my kids to be comfortable to come to me, but I want them to feel comfortable when I push them away to try something hard, but I'll go through it with them.
Yeah. If you want to finish off freestyling any way, shape, or form, but how is doing hard things, including you even recently kind of talking about when someone compliments you and you kind of feeling like this imposter syndrome, like, well, I'm not really as good as they said, or, I'm not really who they think I am, or whatever that may be. Those are hard things. How is doing hard things allowed you to feel like you matter as a human?
I think it goes to there was a quote. What was it? I can't remember who said it, but it made so much sense to me, and it showed this cyclist that would look like they'd just been through the trenches and they were just totally blown and covered in mud and stuff. And it was like, so far you have finished every race that you have started, or you've survived every race that you have entered, or something similar to that. And it was just like, wow, that's so true. Like, it's all been really hard, some harder than others, some more rewarding than others, but like, I'm still going, I'm still moving forward, regardless of how bad it was or could be. And so there's like, there's another quote that says, it's like, it's all, what was it, man? I'll remember it. I'm totally brain farting here, but it'll all be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. And it's like, I kind of laugh about stuff like that because it's like, oh geez, like whatever, but it's so true. And you think about the hard stuff that we have been through, and you look back on it and you're like, I made it. Like, I made it through that really hard time. I made it through that little hard time. And those were, regardless if it was, a hangnail that was really bothering me, or femurs that were cut in half. Like, I think it's good to allow yourself to sit with those hard times and be like, yeah, this hangnail really hurts. I don't care if you have 2 hangnails, mine hurts. Like, you can have yours, that's fine. You don't need to up it, and say, oh, at least you don't have 2. Everything can always be worse, but it's okay to understand and acknowledge that, like, the situation that I'm in right now hurts, but I'm gonna sit with it, and I'm gonna move on, and to know all the stuff that we've moved on from and have overcome. So I think it just shows the longevity that we have, and the resilience, and that we can really kind of get through anything that we're thrown at. But surrounding yourself with good people and a good team and movement is key.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to share? Any last parting advice?
Oh man.
You see what's going on. You spend time with youth. By the way,
Yeah.
Kevin is a coach, an incredible coach. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but in your experience as a coach, a husband, a father, a professional cyclist, any advice that you would give based on what you see?
Have fun. I mean, I know that that's simple and easy, but like I had a conversation with one of my athletes the other day she's crushing it, and she's going really hard, and we're setting some big goals for her. And I asked her to set like one big main season goal, but it has to be obtainable, and it has to be something that gets her up out of bed and really motivates her. But I said, more importantly than that, I want you will find joy every time you get on your bike. I don't care if it's like the sun felt really good today. I want one good aspect out of every ride, every time you train, every time, whatever it is. Whether it's, I had a really good friend with me today. And I think, I feel like I'm overly optimistic in a lot of my life. And sometimes that gets me into, not trouble, but it allows me to take on maybe too much, because I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Let's get it done. And it's like, wow, this is a pretty big project. I probably shouldn't have taken that on, but my optimism is just like, yeah, we got this. And I think if we can incorporate a little bit of optimism into everything we do, and find just even if it's a grain of it, and that's probably the most important thing to me, is to not take everything too seriously, and just seek out optimism.
Mic drop.
For sure.
A little bit of optimism in everything we do. That's so brilliant. It's just to stay positive, There's so much to be, frustrated and angry and, sad over, but that's awesome. Thank you for coming and being with us.
Wow, thanks for having me.
You shared some great nuggets today.
Oh,
So
thank you.
It was great.
This was fun. I really appreciate the invite.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've had your daily dose.